Welcome to this edition of I'm Not Crazy, but with Dr. Rhonda Mattox, triple fellowship trained, board certified psychiatrist, and host of I'm Not Crazy, but we normally go after taboo topics that you guys are talking about from the privacy of your homes on the back porch, those types of things. We go after the what people say to me, I'm not crazy, but dot, 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 dot. And behind that dot, 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 dot is where the gold is. Family, as you are joining us, you know what to do. Drop in the chat where you're representing from, where you're calling from, and just know that we are in for a treat. Family, today we're talking about girls' trip, but women build bridges to sisterhood. Yes, yes. And I have some of my favorite guests on. They are mentally dope, and I really do mean mentally dope. And they are also the host of Mentally Dope in the Miss Charmaine Beasley, LPC, and Jasmine. Jasmine, we're so glad to have you. Now, I really do not want to waste a whole lot of time introducing you to their long, extensive bios. Jasmine Bishop, Charmaine Beasley. What you need to know is these are uncompensated comedians who frequently host who host an amazing show called Mentally Dope, where they dive into many of the things that we're consuming on media. Shows like Jamie Foxx, movies like Soul Food, and talk to us about the kinds of representations that people are showing of therapists or mental health treatment. Now, ladies, you add on to that. Did I get it right on what it is that you do? Or, and it's like a cultural phenomena that they have going on that they've introduced us to. How people are getting it right in presenting therapy and how they're getting it wrong, and the stigmatizing ways sometimes that it's produced. Did I get that right, or do you want to add anything?
I mean, I love the way that you like brought us in like that. I mean, I feel like it's something special
These
that I
are
feel
rock
comfortable
stars. These are therapy rock stars. And I want you to know these have been my Facebook cousins and friends for quite some time. We've never officially met, but when I tell you these ladies drop gems all the time. And I have to say, when I was thinking about when you say girl trip, or girls trip, of course you think about we're about to go somewhere, we're about to do something fun, amazing, maybe Bali, maybe Miami, Las Vegas, all that. You
with.
think about Tiffany
Mhm,
Haddish and Queen Latifah and all those kinds of things, right? But
mhm,
sometimes we trip, and not in that way, but we trip over other people's expectations of us. We trip over our internal guilt or our internal shame or the dialogue that has been downloaded into us from our childhood. We trip over just those expectations or even our expectations that have gone unmet and perhaps even unspoken. And so when I was thinking, women build bridges to sisterhood, watching your relationship. I don't know if you all are friends or not. You look like you're amazing friends and colleagues and what have you. But watching that sisterhood is from someone who does not have a sister. It is wonderful because one of the things that my mother did really well is she built a sisterhood around us. And so I always had these play cousins and aunties and people that I called in my community auntie that I learned in my teenage years were not related to me at all, that she had taken in, that she'd housed, you know, when they were, down on the luck or being abused. And so she really downloaded into me an appreciation for relationships with women by surrounding me with those types of things. So I value it so much. And it's frequently baffling to me when I hear people talk about the kinds of relationships that they have with other Black women, because it's not been my
mhm,
experience. On the greater, I mean, certainly I've had some incidents, but that's not been my experience. I've really had very loving, supportive women who sometimes had some toxic crap going on, but who loved me. And so
mhm.
I'm always really intrigued by the notion of sisterhood and how to build it, you know? So, ladies, we're going to jump in. Let's talk about what sisterhood is, period. What does that look like? What does it feel like?
I think that mine it's joy and struggle sometimes.
Joy and struggles. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah.
What else?
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Tell me
Jasmine.
what you mean when you say Joanne struggles.
Yeah, because like that's one of the things that me and Jasmine have talked about several times on our show is that, and I know that maybe it's different for everybody, but we talk about how a lot of people think that friendships and sisterhoods are just supposed to be easy. I've
Right.
seen the posts all the time online. So, like, if I have to explain to you how to be my friend, or if I got to tell you what's right from wrong, then we ain't gonna be friends. And it's like that's really like not factual.
Mhm.
To take two human beings from separate walks of life and from separate backgrounds and from separate traumas and attachments and all different things, and then just tell them, "Hey, fuse together." Be one, be besties for the resties, and,
Besties for the resties. I like it.
and
Yes.
never have any problems. And that's not factual. So sometimes there is the I say struggle, but sometimes I have to be honest. Sometimes it's not always a struggle if you work at it and if you have the healthy space to be able to work at it.
So I'm going to tell you what I heard. Joy in the struggle. And a part of the struggle can sometimes be your unspoken expectations that
Yeah.
you've not discussed. So the struggle, where is the struggle actually coming from? Is it coming from, I have set my boundaries and you're choosing to completely ignore them? Because that's a different struggle. Or is it coming from, you should just know? And I always go back to, I think, the Jill Scott scene when she was in Why Did I Get Married? And she said, I thought if I gave him what he wanted, that he would give me what I wanted. And I
Actually, the same thing that Angela Bassett said in the exhale.
and I may be misattributing, but I think it was from that.
No.
But I remember I also had that set of expectations. And I remember when I married my husband, and he said to me, because I was putting him through these tests, and he didn't realize that a test had started, and so he was just like, "Listen, I am a lot of things, and I will give you plenty of reasons to be mad at me, but I'm not a mind reader, and so you have to tell me what it is you want." So I can decide if I'm going to do it or not. But you can't hold me hostage. Now, those aren't his exact words, but that was my take on it. You can't hold me hostage for something you never told me about. And I was just like, okay, all right. But I had him set up to be my Jesus and my
Mhm.
God. And it was a setup for failure because I wasn't expressing my expectations. And so, Jasmine, what do you want to add to what Charmaine said, if anything?
No, I mean, I think you summed it up beautifully. I think the problems that we get into with friendships is just expectations, having unmet expectations, not talking with people about our expectations. Like Charmaine said, asking people to be able to show up in a certain way, but you didn't even have a conversation. They didn't even know these are your expectations, all of that. And for me, I think sisterhood encompasses like just like the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Like we can show up and celebrate each other, and at the same time, we can show up and be raw and vulnerable, and at the same time, have somebody to tell you, okay, I love you, and also that ain't it. Like
Right.
you missed the mark,
Right.
homie, and like those kinds of things. And I would say for a lot of Black women and women in general, friendships can be more intimate than how they are with their partners.
Yeah.
Just it's a different level of intimacy. I think I said the other day in my session, friendship breakups are harder than
They
romantic breakups
are.
sometimes because you don't expect those to end. You may expect a romantic, men come and go, all those things, but
Right.
friendship, when we there, we rocking forever. And if something happens, you're just like, ooh, I'm broken in a different way. Because
Yeah.
you knew everything. You knew what I
Yeah.
told him and what I didn't tell him. Like you
Right.
know everything, and it's really hard.
Absolutely. And I think going back to what Charmaine said with that is that you are sharing. And when we are in our partnerships or our boyfriend phase, many times we send out our representatives. That's not really me going out there to meet him. That's the representative, right? But with your friends, you are vulnerable, you bear all, and then you're concerned about, oh my gosh, who are they going to tell? And let me just say right now, this is my shameless plug for why you should get a therapist, right? Because if you break up with a friend, they can have your business out there on Snapchat, Instagram, Discord, LinkedIn, what have you. But what
But
you were
to
paying
me,
for,
I don't know. I don't know. That's something I always struggle with. to me, that's not a true friend, and I don't like those kind of people in my life. I say
Mhm.
this to like hands down. I don't care if me and you was best friends in the 4th grade. I'm still not telling any of your business. And if at any point my business makes it out in the business 10 years ago, me and you was never friends. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. But the issue is that you don't know that until it's too late,
Yeah,
You sometimes, yeah.
right?
yeah,
And well, sometimes you do, but you know, and so by the time that you discovered you weren't friends,
yeah.
the business is out there.
Which
But
also goes to why a lot of people don't have friends.
right. And so I will say that that is the reason why you pay a therapist, because you're paying for confidentiality. Because if you don't like your therapist and y'all break up, you just stop paying us. And if you don't really, really like us because we did something unethical, then you can report us to a board.
Yeah.
And so you're paying for confidentiality, and you're paying for expertise, and you're paying for my training and my history. And sometimes the stuff that you expect of your friends, perhaps you should expect of your therapist and not your friends,
Yeah.
depending on where you're coming from, because all of us don't come with healthy expectations of our friends.
Yeah.
Charmaine, you look like you want to jump in. Come on, girl.
I feel like that there's also a boundary with that too, because I've had to like tell a lot of my clients, you also can't expect of your therapist what you expect of your homegirls. No,
Right.
I can't be your bridesmaid. No, I can't show up at your
Wait, hold on a
wedding.
second. Has anybody invited you to be your bridesmaid?
I've been asked twice to be a
Right.
bridesmaid, and
Can
I'm
you
like,
come to my
oh
wedding? Can you
no.
say a few words at
Oh,
the
oh my girl,
event?
I'm having a get together on Christmas. Could you come by? I cannot.
Yeah.
Our
Hey,
our relationship does not leave this little space right here, and
exactly.
it's actually a
Is there a
paid
reason why you
relationship.
don't
Mhm.
answer to my text at 2 a.m.? I really wanted to talk about something. Why didn't you pick up the phone?
Oh, wow.
Wednesday at 11.
I have never been invited to be in anybody's wedding, and I don't know I don't know how I should feel about that. Any patient's wedding. So you guys must really be doing it well in there if they are feeling that safe, and that vulnerable with you. I yeah.
But I
Now
do think that you
listen.
brought up a good point as to why people do need both, though. We do need people
You
to go
need
have
both.
margaritas with, or like to go
Mhm.
like eat lunch with. We do need people to have those like fun conversations, and I do need somebody to call at 2 a.m. I do need those people,
Yeah.
and those people also aren't my therapist.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's a good
Yeah.
thing. That's a good separation, right? It's
Yeah,
good for you to
Absolutely.
have that separation.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I know during the pandemic, one of the things that I saw, and I'll see this intermittently, but during the pandemic, there were so many people who were saying, who's, really down with you when you're going through, you weren't checking on me. And one of the things that I don't think people understood well enough was that they weren't the only person going through. And
yeah,
so the person who wasn't checking on you was going through as well. They were exhausted, they were tired, they were scared, they were overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
so people were not going to church, they were not doing this, they were not doing that. Out of
Just
fear, not
surviving.
out of
Yeah.
laziness, not
right.
out of whatever else that you have in your mind, or not caring, but completely overwhelmed. And I know the people that I had in my corner that I could normally like and just exhale and then share what was going on with me. Well, then I would find out, if they have lost their job, or if they've taken a demotion, or if someone's died, then I can't, they're not the people I can go to. And so sometimes you can't always, you can't consistently dump on a person and then wonder why they stop showing up for you, because it's not a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not a sisterhood. It's a dumping ground. And what you need is not exactly a friend. What you need is a therapist, so that you can continue to have that friend and be in a healthy way with that. So I really like, yes, you need friends and therapists, and you need them for different
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so we talked about sisterhood, what it feels like, the joy in the struggle, the um, you know, when I thought about sisterhood, I thought about the healthy side and the unhealthy side. And
hmm
so, what comes to mind with my unhealthy sisterhood is Joan Clayton and Tony Childs. If you've ever watched Girlfriends, okay, and
Woo,
they
that's
were
a whole thing.
It's an old thing, and it still comes on now. And
Yep.
for those of you in the chat who are just tuning in, let me just tell you, we're talking about Girls Trip and Women Build Bridges to Sisterhood, and we talked about what sisterhood looks like. But we're pivoting into, what do healthy relationships look like, and what do unhealthy relationships look like? And I'm going to give you the latitude to use those types of shows that we recognize, from Living Single to to Girlfriends, to the show with Natalie and Tootie on it. Tootie being Kim Fields. You remember the girls who
Yeah.
were away at school, or you can bring in your own, because if you're
Facts
just
of life.
Facts of
There we
life.
go. I
Facts
was
of
like,
life.
what is it called? Facts of life.
Jasmine Bishop and Charmaine Beasley are my mentally dope guests who do a show where they're looking at how media presents therapy and mental health and those types of things. And so, since I have them on here, I got to bring up the goods, the shows we love. So, what are your thoughts?
I think that one of the things that I think about when I think about like different situations on Living Single and different situations on Girlfriends is that there was a lot of what people would call toxic situations, but you're also looking at people who had not healed from their own stuff.
Mhm.
So they reacted in ways that people who are unhealed react. I hurt other people. I lash out. I do things to get back. I do things to protect myself. Definitely not helpful. I mean, definitely not healthy. Definitely harmful to the relationship. Um, but also there's also like a part of like, yeah, if we would have been able to talk about this or figure out what was going on within us, then maybe it wouldn't have bleeded into the relationship like that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. And
Jasmine.
I would add to that. I think it's a little bit less binary, that like, we all show up our complete selves, and sometimes we got junk to work on. Sometimes we have not done the work, or there are parts that are still touchy. And I think what separates, a healthy relationship, or maybe even a solid relationship, is us having the space, the fertile soil to talk about these things, right? Of just, it's funny, me and Charmaine just had this conversation. So, it's the first day of Black History Month, so I'm gonna keep it black. So if you ever got one of those friends that pop off at any time for anything, right? And you know that about them, what makes that relationship have longevity is the fact that y'all will have fertile ground to talk about it. Hey, look, you be popping off. We can't go here, here, here. When we go here, I got to be worried about if I got to defend you, and I don't want to do that. So this is what it looks like, right? And so I think it turns toxic when you're not allowed to have those conversations. When you do have the conversation, the person loses their mind, and you can never come back and talk about it. Those kinds of things. So I think like those things will show up in relationships, right?
Yeah.
Like our relationships really mirror what's going on with us, our attachment, all those things. But if we don't have the skills, the ability, the language to talk about the hard stuff and work through stuff,
Mhm.
not just, be like, hey, girl, I'm sorry, let's move through, like actually resolve and
Right.
work through stuff,
Yeah.
then it's going to be really, really hard. And it probably will be toxic.
Absolutely. One of our audience members said fake friends attach themselves to you out of competition. And audience, please drop in the chat your
I
comments,
can relate to that.
your what have you. We see you, Danielle Sherry. We see you, Yolanda. We appreciate you for
Shout out to
tuning in.
Yolanda.
But that
We love you.
the fake friends, and it's interesting that she used the word fake friends, because I think I'd heard you question friends. So what, when you're first starting out, sometimes they look the same, but what's the process for deciding which category people should go in, right? um, are they safe, are they healthy? I mean, because some people, like, I mean, they are loyal, but they aren't healthy, as Jasmine was talking about, so what does a healthy relationship look and feel like, to where you start talking about it like it's a sisterhood? And an audience, you drop in and go ahead and share this, because I can assure you, finger looking good, this, you may not need it now, but you'll want it later. This is what you pick up at 2 a.m. When nobody's watching it and digest as well. So go ahead and share this on your timelines. All right.
I can speak for myself partially. I mean, I think again, there's a process of knowing yourself, because I think that's different for everyone. So when you know yourself, then you can know what works for you, right? I have this kind of trauma, maybe, right, as an example. And for me, a friend that looks like this maybe won't work, right? And that doesn't make them wrong or bad. It doesn't make you wrong or bad, right? But you need to know yourself in order to know who to look out for. And so in general, if my system feels good around them, if I can show up, if I can be excited about seeing them, if I don't have like, oh, like here I go again, here she goes, we're about to be on this with talking about this, and I'm gonna be here for 2 hours and I can't leave, and then I gotta listen to her talk about this, and she don't even want to hear what I have to say about my stuff, you know. If all of that is coming up in me, for me, it shows me I need to reevaluate.
Yes. I
That's
and
just one of, you know, many
yeah.
things.
And the thing about it is, you can start in a place to where both of you share certain values, but as
Certainly.
you grow and you evolve, it no longer feel you're growing in different directions. And so while you all may have been true friends at this particular point in life, things have changed, you've shifted, you've gone in different directions, and now it feels a lot less, you think about if you marry the person you fell in love with at 18, all right, and like thinking about who I was at 18 and what was important to me. Oh, he's so cute. Oh, he's so funny. Oh, he's so popular. Oh, he's a basketball player. Like
Right.
those things right now are like so irrelevant. Oh, we're gonna have
Right.
cute babies. The stuff that you come up with, and now it's like, okay, is he with me through thick and thin? Can I go through a cancer diagnosis with him? What if my hair falls out? Is he still there? Can I raise a child with this person? Is this person going to, so do I feel good about myself? Is this person so the things I'm thinking about now, completely different back then. And that's the way it was with friends as well. Charmaine, what did you want to add?
I think the same thing that you're saying, that sometimes we're not the same person that we were when we first became friends with somebody. We do
Certainly.
grow, we do train, we do change, and sometimes you have relationships that grow with you, and sometimes you have relationships that doesn't, and it doesn't always make them a fake friend or a bad friend or anything
Yep.
like that. It's just that sometimes our lives take completely different turns or different changes, and not everybody can grow through that for whatever reason. Some relationships can. We also talk about this too, that with every relationship that's going to go through changes and going to go through transitions, that requires another, level of our friendship to be able to have these conversations. It doesn't mean that I don't love you anymore, but I'm not used to mom you or married you or sick you. I'm not used to this person, so therefore I have to get used to them and figure out what this looks like. If you said you don't want to drink anymore, and every Thursday, me and you was having margaritas at the at the club. Now I got to figure out what this looks like. You didn't do anything bad, or you aren't a bad
Yeah.
person, or toxic or whatever. But you made a shift in your life, and I got to figure out how I fit into that shift, or if I fit into that shift.
Right.
Yeah. If I still want to do this or if I don't.
Yeah.
Which, another shameless plug, me and Charmaine have a series that's ongoing. That's just a friendship series where we just talk about friendship stuff, right? Of just friendship breakups, working through friendship stuff, even kind of like the fake friends thing, right? Like that you should ways to identify them sometimes, and also like how do you navigate the complicated friend stuff. So definitely go look for that on our Stay Mentally Dope page on YouTube.
And I say that all the time too, that there are certain things that we're also not used to because of past friends and past friend situations. I tell Jasmine that one of the first times that me and Jasmine had to have a difficult conversation, it was just because for me, I was always so used to difficult conversations not going well. With a lot of my friends, I only had one that that it normally did go well with. So now when me and Jasmine when we still have ongoing difficult conversations, but it's we pray first, we plan them out, we talk about things, and then we do an overcap of a recap of, are we on the same page? How are you feeling? How are me? How whatever. And I can honestly say that my central nervous system doesn't feel bad when me and her have those difficult conversations, and that makes me feel more at ease in the friendship, that we can continue to have difficult conversations, or what could be uncomfortable conversations where I'm like, you suck, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But still,
Again,
like,
yeah.
it just like make me feel like, yeah, this is gonna go bad and whatever.
Yeah. And I like what both of you said. So you pay attention to how you feel when you leave the room, how you feel when I've been in a room with you for 30 minutes and I leave. Do I feel inspired, encouraged, uplifted? Am I happy? Am I laughing? Or do I consistently, and I'm not consistently feel down? Am I second guessing myself? Am I doubting myself? Like how do I feel when I leave your space? Consistently. Sometimes that will be. And then the other piece is for me, is this a mutually beneficial relationship? No, 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 no. Is this a mutually beneficial relationship? Am I gaining and are you gaining? Or is this relationship one sided? And there will be times when one of us are going through something and it may be a little bit one-sided. If you're going through a divorce right now and you don't have, or one-sided if you had a miscarriage, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about consistently, this is a one-sided relationship. And so what do those tough conversations look like? How do you set the ground rules for having respectful communication so that you can leave? So that number one, you feel safe having it. Um, and number two, when you leave, the relationship is the stronger for it. And I'll throw in at least one thing that comes to mind. You're not dismissive. You hear me. And what I say, while you may not understand it, while you may not get it, you hear me and you don't dismiss my concerns. What else does it look like?
I think it's, I mean, like you said, I mean, but in order to not be dismissive, you also need to actively listen. So if I'm bringing you a concern, but all you're focused on is being irritated or being upset or being defensive, then you're not actually listening to me. And understandable, because we all have moments where accountability shouldn't be an attack, but sometimes it can feel like an attack, and especially of like where it's coming from, it can feel like an attack. Um, but so not only listening, but also asking the questions. So it's not just like, okay, well, this is what I felt, this is what's happening, and now we're done talking. No, I need
Mhm.
to actually like ask, like, what's your perspective? How are you feeling about this? How are you getting to this? And then, like, us continuing to have an actual back and forth thing until we're both honestly feeling calm in our spirit.
Mhm. And family who's listening in, drop a one for if you've recently had a difficult conversation with a friend that went poorly, and drop a two if you've had a difficult conversation with a friend that went well. But I'm not going to talk about either one of them. I'm going to talk about why we avoid having these conversations, period. Because sometimes you don't have the difficult conversation that goes well or poorly. You don't have a conversation, and then you start to feel some kind of way. And so their name pops up on your phone, you feel a certain kind of way. And it's not always, like sometimes the reason that is because you've not set the expectation and they're not honoring it because they don't know the expectation. Sometimes it's because they are meeting the expectation that you all used to have and the expectation changed and then you didn't communicate the change. And then there is the
Yeah.
I communicated. It's not, this doesn't work for me. I've communicated something as simple as, um, I work from this time to this time. This is a good time to call me, and I can't turn my phone off. So stop calling me because I'm a doc, and and you keep calling me in the middle of my workday. Um, and sometimes it's something else. And so when you have communicated and you've communicated and you feel like you've over communicated where your boundaries are, and um, they're not being respected, even if you value the person, even if you love the person, that when do you decide, hey, let's let this go? And in full disclosure, there have been times when I had trouble letting people go and they had to let me go. And now I'm not in one of those times. So, but what's the process to deciding when to let it go?
Well, I'm going to touch on something that you said before and see if I can also circle back. I think that there's this thing that happens with us in friendships that we see it very differently than any other relationship for some reason. And I think they're really similar, right? Like the way that I would allow a man to talk to me might, still be the same rules for the way that I would allow my friend to talk to me, right? You're not calling me out my name, you're not getting rah rah, you're not doing the whole thing. And so if we can kind of have that same lens that like relationships are living, breathing things, they grow, they move, they change, and we can have those expectations in our friendship, I think that they would go a lot smoother, right? Like we would ride the bumps a little bit better. Like what was the thing that Charmaine also said? Like if I would you need to give your friend as many chances as you give that man, and you keep coming back and coming around and doing that whole thing, is kind of a part of that. Like if we can change the lens of that, I think that will help us with things like conflict. Of like if you are up close and personal with somebody, you have a relationship with them, one of the expectations is that we are going to have conflict. So one of the things that helps is having a plan for conflict. How do you like to handle conflict? How do I like to handle conflict? What works for me? What works for you? Right? And having those conversations adds an expectation. This is going to happen. It's inevitable. We love each other. We're going to disagree. We're going to disconnect about something. We're going to miss each other. We're going to be misaligned. Let's prepare for that. I think that's a huge thing. But then I think that also lets you know if we already have this system about how we have conversations and how we communicate with each other, and it continues to be dysfunctional, right? Like you said, like I'm continuing to tell you, you're continuing to say you understand, and yet you're not doing X, Y, and Z. I have to know when that is going to be a deal breaker for me. Right? When enough is enough for me. What is my personal boundary with this? Can I keep doing that? When you get mad and you bring up all these things that I told you in confidence to hurt me, right? Is that my line? Maybe it should be. For some people, it's not. And, that's their own stuff. But like speaking for myself, maybe that's my line. And we've talked about it, and when you've done it and you've done it, okay, well, maybe that's my out.
And the thing about, I think sometimes with me is when you have given grace that they didn't even ask for, but you gave grace and they didn't ask for it. But when you have had so many conversations, like for me, after I remove myself from a situation, and then like it doesn't even matter if you come back, like I'm no longer in the place that you left me, right? Like when I was fighting for it and fighting for it and fighting for it, and then like I just can't. Like I still love you, I still want the best for you, but I can't even bring myself. Sometimes it's like no, like if you are the person that can continue and continue and continue and continue and continue and continue, by the time I like finally wake up, it's like, man, and I just can't, we can't go back to what it was. Like, and I think people don't get that because when you have good people who are like roll for you, like you just assume they're always like that. But you can push people beyond wanting anything to do with you, even though they still want the best for you. You know, like, and yeah,
and also not, like you said, not talking about things, not resolving things can make things to a point of no return.
yeah,
Right? If we just never do it and it's built up and built up and built up, right?
yeah,
It's a good chance that's not going to end with y'all continuing to be friends because you've never talked about the thing from fourth grade, right? The thing that happened when you graduated and they didn't come or they gave you a crazy look. If you just never tap into it,
you
the
gotta talk
relationship
about
may
it.
never recover, like you said.
Absolutely. And the thing about it is, and don't avoid the conversation because you're afraid to lose a relationship, because it has been my personal and professional experience that when you avoid the conversation to not lose a relationship, you still lose a relationship. You just lose it more slowly.
It's more painful, it's
And more
harder.
painful and more bitter and more resentful, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I would add also, this is where a therapist could really be helpful. I know Charmaine really loves to do this work. I don't know if y'all know this, but two friends can go to therapy. like a couple and talk about the issues that they like to work out because it is necessary. And even if you know you don't want to do it that way, you can go to your therapist and say, hey, I have this person in my life that I love, but there is a hard conversation I need to have. And your therapist can be like, okay, let's talk about some ways you can present it. Let's talk about the stuff that you want to talk about, but maybe all of that doesn't need to go to her. Maybe some of that is reserved for just my office. All of those things, like that is a great resource for you. And I'm sure Charmaine can speak to that more too.
I have just never thought about that, but that is such an interesting take. I mean, yeah, for any screenwriters who happen to be stumbling upon this show, I really do think that we should have some movie out about two friends who decide to go to therapy together. This is a brilliant idea. Charmaine?
So well, don't forget, Tony and Joan went to therapy together. It wasn't quite as effective.
Yes, I forgot about that. Thank you for bringing
You
that
have
in
to be
there.
honest in therapy.
Say that one more time for the people in the back.
You have to be honest in therapy. Nothing changes
Write that
if you're
down.
going to
Put that
continue to
somewhere.
blame everybody else. Nothing changes if you just thought that you can bring someone to therapy and be like, it's her fault.
Yeah. Here's your
No,
problem.
that's not that's not how therapy works. But yes, I am a big advocate. I do a lot of couples trainings, but I actually don't really use them a lot for couples. I mean, I do when I actually have couples, but I actually love to do it with friends and sisters.
And, oh, that is good. So I love this because we don't traditionally hear of people who are going. And the thing about it is, many times, just what Charmaine said, it's or one of you said, when we choose to go to therapy, it's because I'm going to tell them what you have been doing.
Yes.
What's wrong with you? And then that is a surefire way to make them never want to go to therapy again. I remember this young lady that I was seeing. She was probably about 19 years old, and she started seeing me because something the parents had found something. And after we had done the bulk of our work, she said, my parents would always threaten me with therapy after I'd done something wrong, but this has been good for my soul. This isn't punishment. This is an investment. And she was only 19 years old, but she understood that therapy was not punishment. It was an investment. And she got that lesson. My first time in therapy was after my mother's death. And I mean, I literally, when I say literally, like I literally, someone, picked up the keys, drove me there. Like I would picked up the phone, called, made the appointment, picked up the keys, drove me there. Like I wouldn't have made the appointment. I wouldn't have driven myself there. But and when I went there, I was mad that I was there, didn't want to be there, And I remember what she said. She said, if what you're doing is working, then keep at it. What I was doing was not working. What I was doing was sabotaging myself. What I was doing was I was depressed and I was not doing anything. And so it was not working. And I had a lot to lose. If I didn't snap out of it, I was probably going to be, like lose med school, lose future opportunities, maybe even lose my life. Right. So it wasn't working for me. And I think for me, the reason that I continue to have these types of stories with people that look like the three of us is because we've lived through so much intergenerational trauma. Our parents have lived through trauma. We've witnessed things in our neighborhood that become normal that we don't even think of as traumatic and don't even realize it's trauma. I was talking to someone, I was writing this memoir that I not published yet, but my editor, bless her heart, she was crying on my book and everything. And I thought the stuff I was writing was funny. What I mean? Like it was trauma, but it had a lot of this.
It's different when it's
Bless
you.
her heart, she was crying and I was like, I'm gonna have to get a new editor. This is not bless you, sugar, bless you. But it was when she would recount what I said, because it happened so because there was so much domestic violence or
Yeah.
violence or death. It became, I never want to be, desensitized to it, but it happened so frequently that it never occurred to me that people who had not lived through this would have such intense emotions reading that. And I felt like, okay, I need to give a trigger warning for this book. Obviously, if this baby is crying like this over what I thought was funny,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That resonates.
Yeah.
But I think that you brought up something interesting too about how we bring those situations into our friendships.
Mhm.
We bring us into our friendships.
Always.
So we still bring this scared little girl who is scared
Mhm.
of being said that something's wrong with them, or is like, being scared, and like, how do we do that? Well, I'm going to get defensive because I don't want to be told that anything's wrong with me, or I don't want to be vulnerable because like being vulnerable can get me hurt. So I'm going to tell you that I'm fine, nothing's wrong. So like,
I don't want to be abandoned. So
yes,
don't want to have the
Rejected.
hard conversation.
yes.
Yeah.
So we bring all of those things into our friendships, and then we also expect the friendship to not have problems.
They always have. And the thing about it
It's gonna
is,
reflect us.
how safe are you when this happens or whatever? How safe are you? And is it one misunderstanding and you're out? Or am I safe to say I'm scared? I felt, the time that I felt like this, you were dismissive and you made fun of me. And this was really intense for me. And I wasn't joking, but you laughed at my pain. And so now I don't know if I can trust you. And do we have those conversations? Because sometimes when we've been vulnerable in our homes, like, when I grew up, I didn't get to show emotions. You stop that crying before I give you something to cry about. And so it took a lot of work for me to be vulnerable, because that's not the way I was raised. It was,
And that's the truth for most Black women.
yeah, And so because it was not the way I was raised, and I've worked hard to become a woman who is safe in her skin to show emotions, then I'm not going, it's going to be really rough for me to backtrack. And in fact, it's not going to be rough because I'm going to choose not to do it. But I really value you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can value you, but I value me more than I do this relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tricky part, that can be the tricky part. So how do you build a sister?
Speak to two different things? Hold, I heard you say something too that I feel like resonates in this conversation as Black women. There's a thing also about who we let in our homes. I've heard that a lot, of just like, I let this woman in my home. She came in my physical space, because we are very protective about our space. And so that could be, I've seen that be a source of hurt for a lot of people, of just like, I open this up to you and I don't do that. Right? You saw everything. You were literally inside my home. You had a key. You had access to things that nobody would have access to. I feel like that's a very, I'm sure we could track it to where it comes from, but it's also a very Black thing. We don't let just anybody in our space. That is our place and our peace. So I think you're saying metaphorically, yes, I let you in my home, but also literally, I let you in my home. Yes. And that's a big deal. But can I also say, I want to speak to, I think Sharma had a comment about, she said, I avoid hard conversations because a lot of people don't want to know when you feel offended, and you can feel that type of energy. And I wanted to kind of speak to that and say, everything is information if we can allow it to be information. So I would say, don't change the way you want to show up for someone else, right? Think about the way that people react to the way you were showing up. So if you want to go around telling people you were offended because you were offended, and you have a right to do so, do that. And their reaction is the information you need, right? Is that going to be a safe person for me? Are they going off on me? Are they dismissing me? Are they getting defensive? Are they saying, oh, I had no idea. What can I do to make it up, right? That's really good information. That's a good way to find your people, right? If you show your weirdness and they be like, oh, okay, let's go. Those are your people. Or if you show your vulnerability and they go, gross, why would you do that? That's not your people. And that's good information.
Yes,
absolutely. I think that also brings up a good point, is that some of us have learned, I think it was another comment too about like protecting peace, but some of us have learned that avoidance is peace, and sometimes avoidance is not protecting your
peace.
peace.
All the time, avoidance is not.
Avoidance
It's just
is not
avoiding the
peace.
conversation. I think that we say that a lot. That like, well, I'm not going to have the discussion. I'm going to go ahead and cut this relationship off because I'm protecting my peace. No, you're avoiding the conversation because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Which
you
is
didn't even give them a
understandable.
chance to fix it.
Yes,
You
it's
didn't even let them
understandable,
know.
but that you also have to give people the chance to show you that they can be emotionally safe for you,
Yeah.
and also be aware of how you present the information.
Mm.
I always say that you present the information. You don't go in on, like, some people can feel attacked anyways, but you don't go in on the attack. You did this. You're terrible. Like
fool
you
with
do all
nobody.
these things. Like,
Yeah,
I don't got time for you and your attitude. I ain't the one. All those things. Then yes, you are attacking.
and they're
Yes.
not going to
Go
respond
in.
well to that.
You have to
Ever.
go in with the vulnerability of, hey, I love you enough to have this conversation. Something that you said made me feel uncomfortable. Like something that happened between us made us feel uncomfortable. Like, speak with peace. If they don't receive it well, then that's going to be on them. But you also being able to lead with peace and not avoid it, because that's not really showing peace. That's just showing that you're going to avoid the situation.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Oh,
and
this-
that really is self-sabotage. To
yeah.
not do that, or to in your brain say it's not going to work out anyway. There's no point in having the conversation, right? You're sabotaging it before you even can get to a
Mm,
true friend.
And then
mm.
guess what? The hard part about this is that you're going to see this continue to happen in every single friendship. And then we're going to continue to blame every single friend that we're with, when it's like, it's probably you who is doing this in every single friendship and every single relationship. Like,
And
and then,
until you learn the lesson,
I know.
yeah,
you're going to
We
keep
stepping on
repeating
toes.
it.
We are.
Yeah,
We're stepping on toes today.
until you learn the lesson, you're going to keep repeating it. And think about this, as you are, you said, if you don't have a conversation, you don't have the opportunity to preserve a relationship. I remember someone having a conversation, like, just completely, they stopped talking to me. Someone I absolutely love. I mean, like crocodile tears, like, what's going on? Didn't have a conversation with me for 3 years. And when they finally had a conversation with me, I said, haven't I always told you what I thought? Like, it was based on something someone else had said. And I said, does that sound like something I would say? And then I rattled off all the other things that I said that had been a lot harder to say, that I said to their face. Like, one thing about me is I am direct. And so I said, those were that person's words, and they put it in my mouth because you trust me. And so they thought you would receive it based on that, perhaps. But those were not my words, because in fact, I don't think that. I think the opposite. But someone that stops, and I said, and while there was a part of the relationship that was able to be preserved to some degree, it was so hurtful to me that even when it was time to reconcile, or could reconcile, I just thought, I want to be around people that I can be Rhonda with. That if someone says, Rhonda said such and such and such and such, there's some things that should not sound like Rhonda. Like, even if you've been on my Facebook page, there's some things that people could say about me that you should say, that don't sound like her.
And they would go to you and ask you, instead of assuming that's what you said and cutting it off.
Yes.
Hey, I thought we were better than that.
Yes. And so that's the thing, because my thing is, just give me one, maybe two opportunities. Like, okay, one, maybe a mistake. Two, maybe I'm showing you a pattern or something, but give the opportunity, to have this. And certainly, if I have invested in your life and I've meant anything to you, give me an opportunity. Now, there's some people, there's some things that people can do, and you should just cut them off, and they don't get but one chance. If I molest your child, I just get one chance. Okay.
We done. That's
if I sleep with your husband, I just get one chance.
Lying.
So I'm not talking about giving me 20 chances like that. But if I have given you money, if I've given you time, if I've given you good counsel, and you heard something that I didn't say to you, can I at least have a conversation? And so we will avoid these very, very challenging conversations based on what other people have done. And when you say to keep the peace, the only thing you're doing is keeping the silence, because on the inside, your belly is rumbling, your chest is hurting, you're having migraine headaches,
Right.
your
You're up all
heart
night,
is racing.
you can't sleep
You're
because
not
you think about the
keeping peace inside of
conversation.
you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Jump on in, Jazz, because this
No, I'm
this got good to me. I felt something right there.
No,
And
you're exactly right.
And let me
I
just
think, I think that is a big thing, and I've been on both sides of that. I
Same.
have not told one of my really close friends something that really bothered me about our relationship, and it took us years to actually have the conversation. And at that point, I think that her feelings were too hurt that I was not able to come to her, and damage was done. And I have to eat that. That's
Mhm.
something that I did myself, for regardless of me saying I didn't have time for it and I was not in a good emotional space, which was true, but it was not true for me avoiding the situation.
Mhm.
But I also have friends to this day that I still don't know why we stopped talking. And I'm pretty sure that it was something that I may have did that I still do not know what I did. And it's been years, and you can't do anything about that. And that's not really avoidance, but just like ending some, I mean, it's avoiding it ending something that didn't have to go that way.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I, I too have been on both sides where, both done both or whatever.
Mhm.
And then there have been times when people have cut me off, we'll call it ghosting. And I've gone through like my Rolodex of what did I do? And then, and almost felt like a sick puppy going behind them, like, oh, I think you were wrong about me, and then, and I'm so thankful that uh, this isn't, so I'm not thankful for the actual experience, but I'm thankful that I learned the lesson.
Uh-oh.
Oh no, we done lost it.
You know,
Oh,
um,
we
that
lost you for a minute. You froze for a
yeah,
second, but
that I was wrong about them, and many times we'll play the victims. Oh, you did this to me. And I think what happens when you start to build to sisterhood is that everybody owns their role in it. You know what? I shouldn't have came at you like that. You know what? I had you had just lost someone. I should have given you a little bit of time to process and maybe scheduled a time, not right after you get off from work, to talk, or or something like that, and then own your role in it as well. And I think that's what happens with the sisterhood, is when you have some of those hard things that happen, and you do the uncomfortable work of communicating, in a way that is not, um, dismissive,
Yeah.
uh, using active listening, being intentional. Um, do I want to preserve this relationship or not? There's a way you go about things if you want to preserve the relationship. I have a new tool in my toolbox now for friends going to therapy that had just not crossed my mind, like, had not crossed my mind. So I love that idea. Um, but those kinds of things. And so we have a question. So what do you do when you're transparent with someone but they faked the whole entire relationship? And this comes from Georgia Peach. And Larita Davis says, very transparent. Pastor Francis says, this is real girl talk. Yes, Pastor Francis, it is. Larita Davis says, this is a real eye opener for me. And so we have some really good, oh my gosh, we only have 5 minutes. Oh, this is breaking my heart.
But I do
Family.
want to answer this question for Georgia for
come
a
on,
second.
come
Yes,
on,
Yes.
because
go.
I woo,
Yes,
I
I
felt
think
it.
that this is a hard one, and I've definitely been, and I don't know if it's the same situation, but I've definitely been with people who were friends with me for opportunity and not for actual friendship,
Mm,
which is hurtful. There's a lot of
mhm,
hurt in that, of for whatever reason why the friendship was faked. But I think that also you just being able to identify what your role was, and there is
mhm,
a grief in losing a friendship, especially
mhm,
if you
Woo.
thought that you were actual friends and you had, like, become attached to this friend, and there is such a grief in that. But there's also a grief in just being like, say, hey, like, hey, this has to be let go because that wasn't the person who I thought it was. You made friends with somebody who was a false representation of who you thought that
Right.
they actually were.
mhm. They sent the
So it
representative in.
sucks. Yeah, it sucks and it's hurtful, but we got to grieve it and let it go.
Yeah.
Mhm,
And I would add, I have been in that situation. Georgia Peach, I see you. I've lived
mhm,
it. I've seen it. Baby, I please understand. And I would also add to that, know that that had more to do with that person than it had to do with you.
Amen.
Right? Some people do not have the capacity or sometimes the desire to have deep friendships with people because of whatever their stuff is. Right. And sometimes that's all they can bring to you. That's all they have, right? Is that representative. They're not allowing themselves to go deeper and allowing you in. That has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. So baby,
mm,
grieve it like you would grieve an ex. and then
Mm-hmm.
move on. Don't let that relationship predict your future friendships, because there are good ones out there. They exist. Listen, Black women are the best friends you could ever have. By and by. It's not always easy, but they are.
Yeah. And I love what you said. Figure out the role that we play in things when they go awry, so that you don't cast yourself in that same role again. Sometimes I will overlook, say, oh, they're probably having a bad day, when things feel like, oh, they're
Oh,
probably
that's a
having a
good
bad
point.
day, and I make excuses for them without them making. I'm like, oh, and not realizing, oh no, this is a you and them thing, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't know, because I
Mm,
give people grace, and so understand
yeah. That's
that
a good point.
Mhm.
as we're having this
Realizing what you missed. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
ooh, did I see what I wanted to see, or did I really see
yeah,
them?
yeah. And so identify what it is when your autonomic system goes crazy, or when that sixth sense, or when that intuition, or when that small still voice says something is off. Like, don't keep writing that
Trust it.
off.
Trust
Have
you.
a conversation the first time. I remember it just recently. Someone was like, I mean, like someone that I'm not even like close to or anything. They don't even get to imagine they have a relationship with me. Sent me a nasty email that they were offended because I didn't return their call that I didn't get. But like, why are you offended if I don't return your call? Like, we've never even met in person before. I don't know you. But in any event, the expectations that some people can have for having access to you is baffling. So set your boundaries, set your expectations, articulate them in writing or by mouth, and then decide if the relationship is mutually beneficial and you want to continue it, and what and have some deal breakers in mind. Like, there are some things that if you cross this boundary, it's a wrap. And it's okay to articulate those or not. I don't know. Sometimes you don't, there's some things that I shouldn't have to tell you, don't sleep with my husband, boo. I shouldn't have to tell you, don't abuse my daughter. Like, there's some, but really, now, family, this has been finger looking good. I need you to follow these ladies, Mentally Dope,
Yes.
and we're going to wrap up
Stay
our
mentally
time.
Stay
dope.
mentally
Yeah,
dope.
gotta find us. Stay mentally dope.
Stay mentally dope,
Stay
and,
mentally
and
dope. Can I
you
also
ladies.
add? I want to really continue this conversation. I feel like Dr. Maddox needs to come on, and we need to do a girlfriends episode so that we can continue this conversation, because
Yes.
there's so much more. We didn't even get to all of it today.
Yes.
Yes. All right. My job is done here. Been invited to the table. All right, ladies, one piece of advice in 30 seconds for each one of them that you.
Continue to work on you. It's always going to be a continued journey to continue to figure yourself out and then figure out how you show up for others.
Yes.
Ooh, and I would just say, be vulnerable. It's hard, but I've noticed it's always worth it in some way. Just keep putting yourself out there and being vulnerable.
Yes. And I'm going to say, um, choose to be your authentic self so that you can be a magnet for the people who
Ooh,
get that and who are that.
love that.
And then pay attention to that small, still voice that says, this is not right. I hear what they're saying, I see what they're doing. But that small, still voice says, don't write that off. Don't write that off. Have conversations, have tough conversations, have respectful conversations. Don't be dismissive. Family, I am Dr. Rhonda Mattox, host of I'm Not Crazy But, and I am here with the Stay Mentally Dope co-host of Charmaine Beasley and Jasmine Bishop, who are absolutely amazing. After this episode, they will drop in the chat how you can connect to Stay Mentally Dope. I encourage you to definitely go over and do that. We are not in competition, we're in collaboration. I'm not crazy, but I'm building sisterhood and building bridges to sisterhood. Bye bye.